Greetings, dear viewers, ladies and gentlemen. This is Addis News Hour with the news. I'm Shifar Alakau, and thank you for joining us. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has been given the Outstanding African Leadership Award in recognition of the Green Legacy Initiative. The recognition came at a special event under the theme Africa, the urgency of a global mobilization, organized by the American Academy of Achievement and the Global Hope Coalition in Washington, D.C. The global community continues to be confronted with the adverse effects of climate change. PM Abiy says Ethiopia chooses to undertake bold and practical solutions to address the issue. Tigisternisa has the following story.
Following to Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed being awarded the Outstanding African Leadership Award in recognition of the Green Legacy Initiative, the Premier said Ethiopia chose to undertake bold and practical solutions to address climate change as the global community continues to be confronted with its adverse effects.
Like other parts of the world, Ethiopia has also been confronted with climate change and environmental degradation. Such effects have contributed to flooding, soil erosion, deforestation, and biodiversity loss. Therefore, countering climate change and paving the way for green growth has been one of our key development objectives.
In his acceptance statement for the Outstanding African Leadership Award, Abiy thanked the American Academy of Achievement and the Global Hope Coalition for extending a hand of friendship to the African continent and for recognizing Ethiopia's Green Legacy Initiative as an African success story. The Premier also stressed that Africa is filled with many success stories, past, present, and future. The perspective that African countries are net producers of problems that always require external assistance is an outdated one, Abiy said, adding, therefore, great appreciation to the organizers for lighting a torch on the continent's net production of solutions. According to the Premier, in 2019, the Green Legacy Initiative was launched in Ethiopia as a proudly African nation and as a government navigating turbulent times. Ethiopians from corner to corner rose up armed with seedlings to cover the nation green.
ችግኝ መትከል በቢሊዮን በሚቆጠር ቁጥር ኢትዮጵያ ከጀመረች ከሁለት ዓመት በኋላ በርከት ያሉ ሀገራት እንደዚህ አይነት ፕሮጀክቶች ቀርጸው ችግኝ እንትከል ማለት ጀምረዋል። ይህ በጎ ተጽዕኖ በጣም አስፈላጊ ነው።
Prime Minister noted that the act of planting a tree is an act of faith by a young and hopeful nation. In most of Ethiopia, June to August is the rainy season, where the air cools, the dust settles, the rain quenches the thirst of the land after 9 months of heat, and the soil softens, making it hospitable for young fragile seedling to establish roots. He said in the course of these 3 months, the Green Legacy Initiative invites people to come out of their homes and places of work, walk out in unison to a field with a seedling in hand, dig a little hole in the ground, and place the seedling. 4 years into the implementation of the Green Legacy Initiative, it was able to have mobilized 25 million Ethiopians across the nation to plant 25 billion seedlings, equivalent to 250 seedlings per Ethiopian. This impact could be equated to removing 64 million gasoline-powered cars from the road for a whole year. Today, Ethiopia's Green Legacy Initiative is the most extensive afforestation and reforestation program next to the Amazon, Abiy indicated. Besides the tree planting, afforestation, and reforestation efforts, Ethiopia has also put over 700,000 acres existing biodiversity in carbon-rich natural forests under a sustainable participatory forest management scheme. By 2022, the Green Legacy Initiative has fostered a flourishing national green culture, tripling the number of seedling nurseries to more than 121,000, creating more than 750,000 jobs, mostly for women and youth, and generating 1.3 billion Ethiopian birr in income. Seedlings have also been shared with neighboring countries to bolster regional cooperation for transboundary ecosystem management. He added that the Green Legacy Initiative will certainly contribute towards removing the equivalent of hundreds of millions of tons of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and reduce deforestation. This implies Ethiopia's significant contribution to the global climate change mitigation efforts. Moreover, he elaborated that Ethiopia's tangible contribution to the overall global afforestation and reforestation pledge is impressive by any standard, but even more so when it has been financed primarily by domestic resources and efforts. Building on this success, Ethiopia plans to restore an additional 22 million acres of degraded land by 2030, he said, adding, quote-unquote, "We're also developing a green fund and will pursue carbon trading schemes to help raise additional financing," quote-unquote. As a nation, there might be differences do exist in the way that interprets the past and the way it envisions the future. But Ethiopians are united in the hope to have for the next generation in our planet, the statement further added. The Premier also underscored that Ethiopians are aspired to reverse deforestation and build a green society in Ethiopia and Africa, adding that there will be no doubt that the green legacy story will motivate a global mobilization towards reconciling the modern civilization with the planet and ecosystems.
Now, Ethiopia's peace agreement is bringing dividends as its implementation is already underway and the initiative being commended all over the world. The role of intellectuals both during its implementation and maintenance remains crucial. And in this regard, joining me here in the studio to shed more light on the matter is Dachasa Ababa, a historian from the Addis Ababa University. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for the invitation.
So my first would be, what is your overall evaluation of the peace agreement following 2 years of, brutal war that claimed the lives of several thousands and, of course, displaced millions?
Okay, I think it can be seen from two different dimensions. Initially, it is one thing that the overall destruction or whatever casualties I think came to an end because of the process, the peace process. Even if I'm not in a position to say things are or finalized, but just from the very beginning or from the first day to the present, we didn't hear any shoot or any whatever activities that took lives of a human being or other material destruction. So I think it is one fruit of the peace process. On the other hand, we can say also Africa is becoming in a position to solve or look way for its problems by itself. I think as far as my understanding is concerned, things are carried out entirely by the Africans themselves. So we can say Africa is in a position to, is becoming in a position to solve its problem by itself.
Right, right. Okay. So, what roles should be played, by the intellectuals and scholars, especially for the implementation and maintenance of this peace truce?
Well, as everybody knows, the role of the individuals or the so-called intellectuals could be just indicating directions, indicating way outs or solutions instead of making decisions and the like. So we can say Ethiopia should get a certain fruit or bear fruits from this process as long as it, for example, follows or pursues such and such lines. Can be an idea given by the intellectuals, can be a sort of backup for the politicians, as far as I know. This is what I can say. Probably we can also share ideas from some of our historical experiences, how we used to solve our problems,
right.
African problems, Ethiopian problems, So lesson can be adopted from those historical experience. It is the intellectuals who had that knowledge or that experience from their readings. Intellectuals, as far as I know, can play multiple roles in shaping some of the processes, even if I'm not, might be in a position to say this, that, and the like.
All right, Dachas Ababa, historian from the Addis Ababa University. Thank you so much for your ideas.
Okay, thank you.
There is no doubt that future generations will reap the benefits of the seeds we are sowing today through the Green Legacy Initiative. Life, after all, begins as a seed. This is Ethiopia's Green Legacy, our legacy, your legacy. There is no doubt that future generations will reap the benefits of the seeds we are sowing today through the Green Legacy Initiative. Life, after all, begins as a seed.
Now, moving on, the United Nations Population Fund has handed over 10 high-spec ambulances procured with funding from the governments of Canada, Ireland, and Japan to 4 regions in Ethiopia. Of the total 10 ambulances, 3 ambulances were transferred to the Tigray and Amhara region each, while 2 were given to Afar and Benishangul Gumuz region. UNFPA representative Suzanne Mandong signed the ambulances transfer agreement with Health Minister Dr. Leah Tadessa in the presence of the ambassadors of the 3 countries and representatives of the regions. The support of the 3 governments has been very crucial to UNFPA's efforts in meeting the increasing demands for life-saving, emergency sexual and reproductive interventions in humanitarian settings. Now, the British Council Ethiopia office has colorfully celebrated its 80th anniversary in Addis Ababa. This ceremony was opened by a speech from the Council's country director, Nesanet Demoz. The country director underscored that the British Council has played paramount importance in cultural and educational opportunities in more than 100 countries. Kasaun Chani reports.
The British Council is currently celebrating its 18th anniversary. Throughout the years, they have helped people to gain skills, confidence, and connections they are looking for to realize their potential and participate in strong and inclusive communities by maintaining an uninterrupted presence for 8 decades, despite the many changes both in the UK and Ethiopia. The British Council has demonstrated its commitment to long-term partnerships, that is, according to the top senior staff members.
We work in the areas of education, English language, arts and culture. And then, of course, ever since we came to Ethiopia, which is in 1942, right after the end of the Italian occupation and the return of Emperor Haile Selassie, we've been, involved in a number of activities that benefited, the nation, that benefited generation of Ethiopians. Yeah. For example, I think in the early days, our work was, I think the highlight of our work was the Wingate School. So, as you know, there was a lot of damage caused in Ethiopia because of the Italian occupation, and the emperor was quite keen to rebuild Ethiopia, and he wanted to invest in education. So, reached out to the British Council, and we supported, set up the Wingate School. We ran it for about 37 years. Not only that, out of it, of course, came in a lot of knowledge and exchange among British teachers who came out here primarily to work on the Wingate School, but some of them then went on to help with the Minilik Secondary School. Some of them went to help with the other schools, and also even to the Addis Ababa University. And I think I'm right to say that in the early days, most of the master's programs at Addis Ababa University were opened because of the partnership the British Council facilitated with UK counterparts. Yeah.
According to the top senior staff members, in spite of the change that took place in Ethiopia and the UK over the years, what has not changed in the need for people, organizations and nations to make quality connections in a more interconnected world.
At the heart of everything that we do, it's culture and creating the connections, creating platforms, making sure that we're upskilling, building the capacity. So whether it's in education, whether it's in arts and culture, whether it's in English language, it's about globalizing education. In the future, our role continues to evolve, but at the heart of it, again, culture, cultural exchange, and that upskilling and creating the platforms for connections and opportunities. Creating opportunities is at the heart of the work that we're doing. So moving forward, that's not going to change. Whether government changes, whether priorities change, at the heart of it, for us, that is the main thing, is that we are creating opportunities. We're helping the youth reach their full potential. We're helping the network and people that we work with reach their full potential. And we're creating the different platforms of exchange between the UK and Ethiopia.
They also noted that working with generations of Ethiopians in the areas of English, education, art and culture, the British Council has proved that it can meet the changing needs of young people in a rapidly changing world, including professional development and people-to-people ties.
Benefits from the British Council was getting opportunities. I was traveling to different countries, including UK, and I went to Manchester and Hull and London for trainings and other exposures to work with other teachers and to learn from experience, and also share my experience and my culture into different countries. Besides, and we were sharing our cultural songs and our cultural stories to different countries in the UK, to different places in the UK, and also in different parts of Africa. For example, I've been to South Africa, Johannesburg, and Kenya, and Kigali, and Rwanda, and Tanzania. In all these exposures, what I have noticed is working with different culture, working with different people. You learn a lot about those community, and also you learn so many experiences, people doing the same thing in different way. For example, our teaching methodology here in UK is totally different.
The whole of the 8 years, we worked with the Ministry of Education. One of our strongest partnerships was on the education sector. But when you take the arts, so I can go on and on and on about the education one, but let me, I think, state something about the arts. So when the British Council started its work in Ethiopia, it used 16mm videos to actually show Shakespeare plays and other plays, to students in the different schools. And this happened throughout Ethiopia. I think that by itself had a great impact with people with the students at that point of time, in enlarging their visions, in looking at new technologies and so on and so forth. And this continued. And some years later on, again, this is actually more connected with education rather than the arts. But the British Council introduced the Internet Cafe, just recently. But before that, it last with the Education Mass Media Agency to start the first radio and the first television.
The British Council is a United Kingdom's international organization for cultural relations and educational opportunities that work in over 100 countries across the world in the fields of arts and culture, English language, education, and civil society.
Well, dear viewers, let's now turn our attention to trending stories over the past 24 hours. And I'm joined by my colleague, and he's going to help us share some of the things that he observed over the past 24 hours. Do stay with us. Goshu, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Shaheen.
So, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed is meeting with various high-ranking government officials in the United States of America. What are some of the things that you observed in this regard?
Yeah, the US-Africa Summit, which gathered various leaders from Africa, is underway in the United States. And the Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed earlier this day has received an award from his Great Legacy Initiative. He received an award, and he met various leaders or top officials of the U.S. Secretary Antony Blinken and U.S. National Security Advisor in sideline. He met them and he exchanged different views with them. So Prime Minister and Blinken discussed on the progress and implementation of the November 2 Pretoria Agreement, which is vital to ensure peace and stability in the northern Ethiopia. They talked on the progress and implementation of the peace process. The other thing is Secretary Blinken, on his part, commended steps taken by the Ethiopian government to improve humanitarian access and bring restoration of basic services like telecom services and banking services, and electricity service is restored after a lot of maintenance which is taking place in the northern parts of Ethiopia or in Tigray region. So the two exchanged views to revitalize and strengthening historical relationship between the two countries. Blinken also pledged that U.S. is committed to support Ethiopia's political and economic reforms. So U.S. and Ethiopia have decade-long relationship. Ethiopia is a strong ally for U.S. in the Horn of Africa. So they want to revitalize or furnish their relationship. They exchanged their views, these views. And Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed tweeted that I held a candid and productive meeting with Blinken. He expressed his appreciation to the U.S. for their contribution in Ethiopia's efforts to achieve or lasting peace. The other thing is Blinken expressed that the United States remains committed to supporting the African Union-led peace process, including the AU monitoring and verification mechanism. I think the peace process is underway, and the TPLF is just on the process to disarm. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed also held discussions with U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan over a host of issues. So the two exchanged views on issues including the implementation within the Security Advisor, hostilities, political and economic reforms of Ethiopia. So Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed is just met various leaders, and it's expected to meet other leaders, other top officials, which is crucial for Ethiopia. If you remember last time during the war in the northern Ethiopia, the US just put in place various sanctions, and I think to improve that, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed is just meet various leaders or top officials in order to harmonize that problem.
Right, things are improving between Ethiopia and the United States of America as well. Goshu, so thank you so much for that idea.
Pleasure here.
ሌብነት የኢኮኖሚ ነቀዝ ነው፣ የእድገት ነቀርሳ ነው። የገጠመንን ሀገራዊ ፈተና የገጠመን ሀገራዊ ችግር እንደ እድል የወሰዱ ሰዎች ቀይ መስመር ያልነውን ሌብነት ቀይ ምንጣፍ አድርገውታል። ሳይሰሩ የሚበሉ ነበር ድሮ። አሁን ሳይሰሩ የሚበሉ አይደለም፣ የሚሰራ የሚበሉ። የሚሰራውን ሰው መርጠው ይበላሉ፣ ሰው እንዳይሰራ። ሌባ ከዚህ ቀደም እንዳልኩት ቤት ይሰራ ይሆናል እንጂ ሀገር አይኖረው። በሌብነት ቤት እንጂ ሀገር አይገነባም። ሀገር አልባ ቤት ደግሞ ዘላቂ አይሆንም። የሆነ ሆኖ በስራ አስፈጻሚ ተወያይተንበታል። ሀገራዊ ኮሚቴ አቋቁመን ጥናት እያጠናን እንገኛለን። የተከበረው ምክር ቤት፣ መላው የኢትዮጵያ ሕዝብ ለዚህ ፐርፐዝ ብቻ የተዘጋጁ ስልኮች አሉ፣ ቢሮዎች አሉ። መረጃ ሰነድ በማቀበል ቢያንስ ባናጠፋ እንኳን ሌብነትን አንገት እንድናስደፋ በጋራ እንስራ።
Welcome back. You're still watching Addis News Hour. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken stresses the importance of partnership in remarks to an audience of entrepreneurs and innovators at the State Department Monday evening. However, some Africans criticized the reliability of U.S.-Africa relations. Tegasernes has more on that from Africa News.
The U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken stressed the importance of partnership in remarks to an audience of entrepreneurs and innovators at the State Department Monday. Blinken was also meeting African leaders where he reiterated for the need to incorporate more private investments on the continent.
Have a huge stake in the success of African innovators because when they're empowered to reach their full potential, it's good for the region, it's good for the continent, it's good for the world, it's good for America. The U.S. private sector already invests more than $4 in Africa for every dollar that our government allocates to the region in foreign assistance, and it wants to do more. That's the objective of our Office of Global Partnerships, which will take a U.S. private sector delegation to Ghana in February.
The U.S. is now facing stiff competition from Russia and China that have in recent years increased their partnership with Africa. Critics point out an inconsistent U.S.-Africa relations.
The challenge is the U.S. relationship or engagement with Africa is not always consistent. It changes from administration to administration. It depends on who controls the White House, who controls Congress, and that makes it difficult sometimes for Africans to understand who exactly are we dealing with. So it raises some question on the reliability of the United States as a partner.
The Biden administration is hoping to rekindle America's relations.
Well, you have been watching Addis News Hour. Now a quick recap of the top stories.